So for those who don't know me, my name is Elizabeth Anderson and I am the Chief Executive at the Digital Poverty Alliance. We are a nationwide charity looking to end digital exclusion once and for all throughout the UK. Thank you so much if you are joining us live for coming along to our webinar, Digital Inclusion Through Organisational Change, which unites our 5 first ever UK Digital Inclusion Award winning organisations, and also is within the 1-year anniversary window of the UK Digital Inclusion Action Plan released by DCIT. Strictly speaking, tomorrow is its first birthday, but we're pretty close onto that, so it's good to be celebrating 1 year. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to just very briefly introduce themselves and say hello. So I'm going to work around my screen and start with Claire.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Fewings. I work for Salford Council and I am an AI and data lead. Thank you.
Fabulous. Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Copley. I'm Chief Exec of an organisation called Shiny Advice and Resource Project based in the Sunderland area of the UK, up in the northeast.
Brilliant. Shelley.
Hi, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Shelley, CEO, founder of SQR, which is an identity company. And I would just probably like to add as well, we won along with a charity called Site Matters the award. So I just want to drop them in straight away into this and be representing both of those organisations today.
Amazing. Vicky.
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth. I'm Vicky Evans. I'm Head of Corporate Social Responsibility at Atos UK&I. We're an IT services company.
And Jade.
Hello, I'm Jade Baker, Community Programme Manager at Virgin Media O2. I work in the social impact team.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much. Just before we start getting into our conversation, if you are joining us live, please do pop in the chat who you are, which organisation you represent, and whereabouts in the country or indeed in the world, if you're from further afield, you are today. If you have a question, there is a little facility down at the bottom of the screen where you can raise Q&A. We'll try and come to as many questions as we can at the end of the session. Do get questions in. We love having questions, and do keep the chat lively. It's always fantastic to see a bit about who's where and what they're doing. But let's dive into it. So my first question is actually to you, Claire, which is Salford City Council's Digital Everyone programme won the Raising Awareness Leading Voice Award. So congratulations on that. As digital access becomes ever more central to public services and really to everyday life, what shaped your decision at Salford to make digital inclusion a civic priority, and what has that actually required in practice?
Thanks for the question, Elizabeth. I think for us in Salford, the decision to make digital inclusion a civic priority came from 2 places. I think firstly, we recognise that digital access, it's no longer optional, whether that's applying for jobs, managing benefits, supporting your child's education, accessing health services. I think digital is now woven into everybody's everyday life. We're really clearly seeing that people that have not got access to the skills, or the connectivity or the kit are really being locked out of opportunities in a city with pockets of deep deprivation, and as local authority that's not acceptable to us. So I think secondly, we've got really and had really strong foundations. Our programmes like Digital You and Digital Everyone showed us the power of long-term community-led work. So elevating this to a civic priority, I guess it wasn't a leap, it was the next step for us. So I think in practice, it's meant embedding digital inclusion into our corporate plan, our anti-poverty strategy, and certainly into our redesign work. So it's not an extra add-on, it's just how we do things now. I think it's required really strong partnerships from our BCSE sector, our libraries, community hubs, health partners, because I think one of the biggest lessons for us is that no single team can deliver this alone in the city. And I think crucially, it's required us to use data like our digital exclusion risk index to focus our efforts where exclusion is highest. So making it a civic priority meant treating digital inclusion not as a tech issue, but as an economic, social. So the whole system owns it. And I think lastly, I'll finish with it's taken time. This is not something that we've achieved as local authority overnight. Our journey started right back in 2018 when we started our partnership with Good Things Foundation. So yeah, I hope that answers your question and tells you a little bit about how we've made it a civic priority and what we had to put in place. Is that okay, Elizabeth?
That's fantastic, Claire, and I think it's really important, that point, that when we're thinking about digital services, that's not just an IT problem. Of course, we need IT involved in that, they're fundamental, but there's so much else that flows through from that and needs to flow into that, and it's all about the systemic change. And Sylvia, a Shiny Advice and Resource project received the Digital Skills Development Community Development Award. So again, congratulations on that. It's great having all these award-winning people on one call. You run really hands-on programs that build confidence alongside capability.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? What does that look like on the ground? And what actually helps someone move from getting online potentially for the first time to being able to really kind of thrive in doing so?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Similar to Claire, we started our journey in 2017. It was a long journey, or it has been. We've learned an awful lot along the way. And it was prompted by the rollout of universal credit and how that impacted on our community, which is that is what drives everything that we do within our charity. It's the needs of the community and recognizing the impact of unintended consequences, perhaps, to massive change and how that impacts on people and their ability to run their lives with autonomy. And we are a rights-based organisation, so for us, it was a lot around how do we make sure that people have got in place everything that they need to take a full part in society, but also to be able to manage their lives. What we've had to do is we had to go back to very, very basic things, Elizabeth, like looking at literacy levels that people had. Because we all make assumptions, don't we? People carry tech around, they're scrolling through phones, they're doing all sorts of fast-paced typing and clicking. But actually what we found was a lot of people behind that didn't actually understand the capability of devices, the level of skill that they need to practice to actually make sense of things. And as Claire said before, everything moved online very, very quickly. We've had literally a revolution, I think, since 2017, if you think back to how things were. And we recognised very quickly that people were being left behind. They were suffering sanctions through not being able to maintain online journals for their UC accounts and that sort of thing. So what we did was we had to look at our presence within the community. We had what we called an electronic village hall, which was fabulous for its time. But we needed to change that very quickly to a digital hub. And we did some of this work through partnership. Sunderland City Council moved through smart city initiatives and that sort of thing. Virgin Money Foundation funded us as a community anchor organisation and have been part of our journey. We supported the development of the Building Digital Skills programme along with a number of other community anchor organisations in the North East and also in Glasgow. So there was lots of learning along the way, and we had to challenge ourselves. We had to really get alongside people and remove our own barriers and assumptions, and to recognize that people were put in the position of having to do everything online. They didn't have email accounts. They didn't know how to use banking apps. They didn't know how to get bus timetables, so they couldn't actually make it to appointments. There was a lot of very, very practical issues. So we started right back at the bottom, if you like, and looked at the level of IT equipment that was necessary in our centre. We worked with Good Things Foundation, and we got data cards, we got free access to training through Good Things Foundation. We ran one-to-one sessions, which have been really, really important. It's about creating a safe space within the centre where people feel safe to come in and go, I know nothing. I haven't got a clue. And we are able to say, that's okay, grab a coffee, have a sit down, and we start with that very low or light touch engagement. There's no such thing as a stupid question, as we all know. We all have to have the space to be able to do that. So really, since winning the award, I can't tell you what that meant to us in terms of moving us on for motivation, to be connected to other people and to learn so much through the Digital Poverty Alliance, which is what we have done. We've picked up a lot of learning and connections. To really look at things, we've read the recent report around young people. And I was astonished that people can go to university. Was that a talk you gave, Elizabeth, where people actually can go to university and have the wrong kit, or the kit can't handle the systems in the university. Now, as a parent in a working class community, you would go to the ends of the earth to send your kid off to university with everything that they need. And can you imagine the devastation that doesn't actually work in the way that you expected? So we've learned a lot. We challenge ourselves. We, as I say, have created a space where people are able to just join a community of learners and to just go through things together. And we are able to be, I guess, a conduit in terms of upskilling people, upskilling ourselves, spreading it out to the rest of the community, and through the VCS. The rest of our voluntary sector networks are really on board with looking at this now as an issue. Sorry, I can't talk for England, Elizabeth, so I will stop there. Not sure I've covered what you asked me.
No, that is fantastic, Sylvia. And I think something that has really shone through from Sharp is around how you have built that community centre in not just community centre, but that community feeling, I mean, within Sunderland, and how that has spread out and how that has had that impact. And the fact that it feels like it's for everybody within the area. It's not trying to support a group of people, which is incredibly valuable, but actually it's trying to support everyone, which can be quite challenging to do because everybody has such different needs in terms of what they're trying to do. I'm also really glad that the award was so well received. Where it's good to celebrate good work that's happening, as well as just sort of highlight all the challenges that everybody's having all the time. Shelley, coming to you next at SQR, and of course very much with Site Matters, you received the Ensuring Accessible Services Innovation Award. So again, congrats on your win. I'm going to keep saying this because it's exciting. And it does feel like this work shows how inclusive design, that design piece, can turn principle into practice for people, particularly in this case with sight loss. Where do you tend to find services tend to most often fall short? What has to change so accessibility is actually designed in at the start and not seen as an add-on at the end?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I'm going to say where we fell short and be very humble about that. We are certainly not perfect, and where we ended up collaborating with Site Matters was because we fell short, and we acknowledged it, and then we went, okay, so how do we change this? How do we make a difference here? And that was really because our team did not have the lived experience. And Sylvia mentioned it's like quite similarly that challenge as well, just before that. Not having the lived experience, you see life through your lens, like naturally. Lots of people going through their lives with very good intentions and well-meaning. This is what we were. We weren't actively wanting to exclude people, but we were approached at a conference by a Site Matters service user, and they challenged us and said, what are you doing to make sure that your app is accessible for people with sight loss? And devastatingly, I couldn't answer the question. And so we set about to try and rectify that and understand how do we go on that journey of acknowledging it is the first piece, but then how do we go and fix that? So I went to Site Matters and I said, how can we work together to solve this problem, not only for us but for other people? And they said, well, it's a really good timing actually, Shelley, you came, because we're wanting to set up a pilot scheme to use a test. They don't just do technology, they do all sorts of accessible services. They do things for the local council in terms of bus routes, planning things, all sorts of things for those with sight loss issues. But actually, ours specifically was getting some of their service users in a room, and what they wanted to do in that pilot is make it not just for us, but to cookie cutter it and make it for other services so that they could go and participate in this. So we were very much the guinea pig and helped them pull it together in terms of some of the issues that we came across in that journey that we went with them. But the idea is that their service users will be paid as a valuable member of the community. So they're not paid a wage. There's a way of doing it that's compliant with their with the rules, but that they can actually get something from it, and also the organisation does. So they're not, people are not used for their sight loss, but they're participating, and all it's a harmonious experience. But yeah, the lived experience thing is key. And then to the second part of your question, about whether they designed him from the start. I think we were in probably a more luxurious position because we were building something, and we were early in that journey. I think a lot of the time people are not building from the start, and we have to acknowledge that we're in flight and then actually we still can take efforts and move things, but I think often it's that you don't know, and so building the awareness is really key. And I think I'm going to do a little nod for the awards as well, because that really does help build awareness. So yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's fantastic. It's really easy actually for companies to feel defensive when somebody comes and points out maybe that something isn't working quite as it should. I think we're all human, and it's really easy to go, yes, but do you know how much effort I've put into making this do the thing that it does do? So actually having that mindset of just wanting to grow, wanting to make it as inclusive as possible, that is absolutely brilliant, because it's not always something that's that easy to do. It takes more time, it takes more resource, it takes more money, but it's then hopefully incredibly rewarding in terms of how people experience that product, and probably makes it a lot more accessible in lots of other ways
For
as well.
everyone, actually, for everyone.
Yeah.
Because if you're servicing the needs of a more marginalised community, you're actually servicing the needs of everyone, essentially. So yeah.
Absolutely. Anything that makes things easier for some people generally makes it easier for everybody else as well. Turning to Vicky at Atos. So again, congrats, because you received the Partnership for Impact Collaboration Award. And this was for forging cross-sector partnerships, which Atos have done startlingly well under your leadership, Vicky. So well done.
Thank you.
what has really helped you to ensure that partnership leads to practical change? And what do you do when collaboration maybe risks becoming activity, but without necessarily impact?
Yeah, thank you. So a little bit of context. We started at the end of 2024, so we're really new to the game, and there's, lots of people that have been doing this far longer than we have. And we made a public commitment to donate all of our end of life, and I'm going to put little inverted commas there, end of life hardware, that we would work with you guys as our outreach and donation, digital inclusion donation partner. And I think the first point is about recognizing value. So after going on a learning journey, challenging some of those assumptions that we've already spoken about around what digital poverty actually means, it became really clear very quickly that end of life just means out of warranty. And it was a simple change, albeit, it's not been necessarily straightforward, but it was a simple change in our asset disposal process, that instead of sending things for breakdown, or that actually the value for those in digital poverty from a piece of kit that was out of warranty is significant. So I think the first thing that we did was really being able to identify a very simple or a practical change that leads to impact. That was the first point. And I think, we, with the help of Digital Poverty Alliance, are really proud that 528 devices were able to go into the community in 2025 and really just set us on that journey. And then the second thing that you talked about was those risks. And with any new process, with any new program, I think risks are always evident. And the thing that we have had to do in the organisation is constantly challenge assumptions around everybody has access to tech. And I hear it in work and in my personal life, this notion that especially young people, well, everyone's got phones, but no one's thinking about, but a phone isn't a piece of hardware that enables people. You're not necessarily connected. Do you have access to download the apps that the schools are assuming you can't do your homework on these devices? So, and I think where the partnership angle is so impactful is leveraging the expertise. So we are in no place to try and replicate the fantastic work that DPA and other digital inclusion charities are doing. It's about leveraging your expertise and amplifying the voices of the people that are in receipt of those donated devices, and whether it's through webinars, whether it's through, we've got some fantastic posters around the offices that are really helping for people to understand that we hold on to these assumptions about everyone has got devices, and that then helps to drive a behaviour change, and it makes our process and less challenge, or it helps any risks that come to the programme. Just, it's making people kind of take a breath and have another thought around those assumptions that we hold on to. So yeah, I hope that answers your questions.
It does. Thank you so much, Vicky. And it's fantastic to be working with Atos. And Atos were one of the first signatories of the Government IT Reuse for Good Charter as well. So it's been really exciting to kind of see how these partnerships can actually form and develop. And 528, I think you said, Vicky, I should know that number myself off the top of my head. But that's not even just 528 people helped, that's 528 households helped. And that reach is so huge in terms of what that can mean for kids doing their homework, for families who are undergoing training courses and so on, so that parents can get into work, for people who are accessing different essential public services. Dare I even say it, maybe even having some fun with it, which is actually still a really important thing for people to do. You know, we like to talk about all the essential purposes, but also fun is quite important. And Jade, sort of staying on a device donation theme. So Virgin Media O2 received the Device Donation Sustainability Award. So again, congrats, because this was recognising the large-scale device reuse that you have made a permanent feature of VMO2 operations. What did you guys have to put in place internally to make that permanence real? And is it challenging, you know, maintaining that at that scale?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, really, I guess, sort of in the theme of, you know, partnerships and collaboration, which seems to be key across this discussion, that was needed. I think to go back to the sort of first stage in it, our approach needed to be based on insight. And I think at the start of our journey, community calling was set up. That's our device distribution program. It's set up very quickly in a response due to COVID. And that was a quick program that was sort of set up to provide people with devices who were in need. The scheme since then has donated over 30,000 devices to date to people in emergency need of connectivity through a device. However, I think throughout the delivery of that program, we realized early on that the program doesn't produce a reliable supply of devices from the public, particularly. Around 20% of what we get back sometimes is actually not able to be reused as a device to go to a digitally excluded person. And we realized from then that, you know, we needed to build in the business case, and there was the rationale that we needed to lean internally into the business to think about how we could create and sort of build a more steady and predictable supply of devices with collaboration of our supply chain team. So I think setting up that initial business case based on that insight was needed. The second thing I would say is shifting sort of shared ownership and responsibility through the business. You know, it's not just philanthropic programs we might deliver through our sustainability strategy, but actually the whole business can get behind this. So setting cross-department measures for circular actions across the business allowed us to shift some of that responsibility to our business operations and think how other teams can contribute to our circular actions target and work towards a wider goal that we can all share and bring more advocates across the business into our work. And what was really needed for that was for us to, you know, we spend a lot of time in our roles in the business sort of talking about how everyone's role can be a sustainability role, and trying to push for those advocates within the business and actually showing how other teams can contribute to this work and play a really key role. It really helped to build that sort of longer term sort of partnership with other teams and to have that shared goal. In terms of the challenges, I guess, one thing which I guess is clear for us all, demand is still high for people to have access for devices. I think when we had, you know, 12,000 devices being donated, that felt like a lot, and quickly 12,000 devices can get out into the community because there's such a big need. Last year, I think we collaborated and supported over 60 organisations who needed to provide devices to people within their networks. So you know, the scale and need is there with over 1.6 million adults, I think, not having a device or so. And it's about how we can support the collective goal, which I guess a lot of us have, to try and get people connected with a device who need them, and where people are in emergency sort of crisis need to get one quickly. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you, Jade. And I think it's such an important point, and it's great to hear somebody from industry saying this, because it makes a change from somebody like me at a charity saying it, because we do hear sometimes, well, there's lots of people donating devices. Is there really that much demand? Can charities scale to get that many devices out? Yes, as Jade just said, yes. Thousands of devices can very, very, very quickly disappear. You know, but what that doesn't mean is, if you don't have thousands of devices to give, that doesn't mean that it takes away the worth of that, because it's like anything. It's like a petition. Every one person who gives in any one device is helping towards that. Any business that's giving in 5 devices is helping towards that. But similarly, if you are watching this and you are going, oh, we're about to get rid of 2,000 Windows 10 laptops, I wonder if they could be useful. Yes, they very much could. We'll all take them. Everyone on this call knows people who need them. Let's carry on with questions. What I will say to the audience is, get your Q&A in. That little Q&A button is down there, and we should have a little bit of time to come on to a couple of questions. So, Claire, sort of building on what you've been doing within Salford, what have been the practical steps that you've taken that's helped Digital Everyone move from raising awareness, which is incredibly important, as we've heard about, but to really shaping day-to-day delivery? And maybe what challenge has been the hardest for you to navigate along that journey?
I think, Elizabeth, that shift from awareness to delivery has probably been one of the most important parts of our journey. And as I said earlier, a long journey. And I think there's probably three or four things that have really made a difference. I think the first one is having a clear model for delivery. So we built a really structured offer through what we call our Digital Everyone programme, and that was about combining device access, connectivity, support, skills and training, and local digital champions. And I think that this meant for partners and frontline teams, they knew exactly what support existed and how they could refer into that. I think, secondly, embedding digital inclusion into services people already use, and I'm really passionate about this. So instead of expecting our residents to go to digital that was elsewhere in the city, we work really hard and really closely with our family hubs, our libraries, our early help teams, housing, our existing community organisations across the city. So actually digital support was available in established, trusted community places. And I think that's where the day-to-day change really happens. So in our gateways that we've got across the city, they're like our community facilities run by the council. We have 1.1 million visitors that come through those doors. And what every year, and what we did was we created those kind of really trusted faces and local places for people, and made sure that people could access support hyper locally in the place where they lived. We also made sure that we ran a programme and made sure that there is digital support in our city for everybody within a 15-minute walk. So that's, 109,000 households have got access to digital support in Salford, 15 minutes from where they live. And I think, lastly, having tools like our digital exclusion risk index has moved us away from kind of general awareness raising to tailored actions. So we've got ward level action plans across the city, and that differs from one end of the city to another in terms of what people, what communities need. So he was able to target plans around device distribution, focus support for groups, around care leavers, older adults, low-income families. And I think the hardest challenge, and going back to what Jade said, really resonated as well. Sustaining capacity across the system, demand is still high. Digital needs are so diverse, and partnerships and resources are still stretched, and people do still need kit connectivity, skills and support. So I think it's about keeping momentum, constant coordination, shared ownership, definitely, as I said earlier, not one organisation or local authority can do this on their own, and making sure that inclusion, digital inclusion, stays visible amongst all those different competing priorities. I'll finish on, I think, saying the award that received really shows that the collective effort is working. And it reminds us that the shift from awareness to delivery only happens when digital inclusion becomes everybody's business, becomes everybody's job. And as we always say in Salford, it's not about the tech, it's definitely about our people. I'll finish there, Elizabeth, if that's okay.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Claire. And I feel like a theme of the last few days for me has been sort of hearing about the mix that is required to tackle digital exclusion. And we came up with this term patchwork, and then somebody at a leadership roundtable we held yesterday came up with the term coordinated patchwork. And it feels like that's exactly what's needed. It does need everybody playing their part, and every patch is absolutely as valuable as the next patch, but you've got to sew it all together, not just sort of have crochet squares lying around all over the place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's been a huge, huge factor in, when we very gratefully accepted the award, that is recognition for our libraries, our communities, our partners that we work with. It absolutely could not be done without that whole system, whole city approach. There's many organisations, many businesses, many people that contribute towards the digital inclusion agenda, making sure that nobody is left behind in Salford. It's a huge infrastructure that works towards that.
Absolutely, and incredible work by everyone who is part of that, but also incredible work, Claire, by you and the rest of your team in coordinating all of that, because it doesn't just happen. It's not magic. Actually, a lot of work goes into doing that. And Sylvia, you sort of talked about the receiving the award kind of being a bit of additional even motivation within your organisation. What practical steps have you taken to really build on that, and what challenges are you continuing to navigate, seeing digital access become ever more central to so many public services and education and just life?
I think the award and the membership of DPA, I think, has enabled us to take the voice of ordinary people into quite strategic discussions where decision makers meet. And I think that is really important for all of us as we move forward, because again, it's around embedding things at a very deep level within communities, isn't it? In terms of building the skills that are required, building the digital infrastructure. One of the things for us that's been really important, Elizabeth, has been the access to free Wi-Fi that has been available throughout the city. And in terms of connectivity, that's been really, really important. In terms of going forward, can you just refresh me there, Elizabeth? What was that bit of the question?
So thinking about as digital access is becoming ever more vital everywhere, what are the challenges you're still facing?
So the challenges, one of the, I made a note before when someone else was talking. One of the things that we have done is focused on providing a dedicated digital worker, DigiMe project worker, and that it is about relationships. It's around that constant. It's like any education, is it? Is that constant reinforcement in a positive way around the skills that are being built, how they are then um, transferred into every aspect of everyday life. So for us, it's around, oh, you can do online shopping. Let's look for a great energy deal. Your mobile phone contracts up. Let's have a look at that. And we start off with people looking at that together. We might have workshop sessions. We might have a brunch where people come in and find out things while they're having something to eat. Because for us, it's around not stigmatizing. We do not work with a deficit model. It's around how we build, how we empower, how we take our place in society as a community. And I think that's really important. So for us, that investment has gone into people, relationships, skill building. It's great to hear about all the donations of devices. I'll be knocking on some doors, I can tell you, after this call. So that's fabulous. But again, it's around not just sending people off with a device, it's around them learning to bring that device back to look at the next skill set, and it's a journey. We're all on a journey. And it's how we make that journey enjoyable for people who are sometimes very, very nervous. And I used to be not good at things because unfortunately that's the life lesson that a lot of people they have experienced, that they're not winners, they're not great at things, they don't feel that they achieve. And really to see the just the buzz that somebody gets out of being able to sort of attach an attachment to an email and send it to somebody else, and then that gets printed off and there's a document. It's fabulous. For me, it's like being back. I used to work in schools years ago, and that joy that you get when somebody gets it, when that light bulb goes on. So that's the world that we're in at the moment, and I'm enjoying every minute of it because it's a huge learning journey for me as well. So yeah, sorry, I've probably gone completely off track again, Elizabeth.
No, but that it is fantastic, and I think it's really easy when you're not somebody who is working with people who've experienced digital exclusion, when you're not doing that day in, day out. The we don't at the DPA, we don't give out laptops for gratitude. We give out laptops because people need it. But when people send those emails back and you hear about what it has meant to them or to their child, that is incredible. And I would imagine, Sylvia, exactly as you say, when you're giving someone a device and you're giving them the tools and the confidence to use it, is it skills? Yeah, okay, it is skills, but actually it's that confidence, it's that self-belief that I can do
And
this, I can
it
manage this.
is, and I think there's something around pride there, isn't it? You can take
Yeah,
your place in the world. You can stand in the bus shelter and you can go on your phone and you can tell somebody else when the bus is coming because you
yeah,
know how to use the app. So it's
yeah.
all of that. It seems like very simple stuff, but it really isn't. It really matters.
It does, and I think it really changes how people, yeah, as you say, perceive themselves and their role in society and
Mhm.
their own, yeah, as you say, their pride in themselves and their ability to be able to help other people. It's huge. So thank you so much for everything you are doing in Sunderland. It is
Oh, thank you. It's
incredible.
not just me. It's not just me. There's loads of us doing it.
I'm glad it's not just you, because there are quite a few people in Sunderland. It might take you a while to get around all of them personally. Um, Shelley, coming back to you. So when you and SQR are maybe working with other organisations that want to do the right thing, what's the most important shift you try to create in terms of how they think about inclusive design, particularly for people with sight loss?
Yeah, it's I was actually speaking in Copenhagen a few months ago where in the gaming sector, and one of the things that I raised there was actually it's almost like if you're not going to bake this into your designs of your virtual experiences, you're basically, it's almost like, you know, cutting off 10% of your potential customer base. It's almost like, you know, the people that might want to actually participate, you're basically saying, yeah, no, we're not interested in your business. And you would never do that, you know, when you put it in that sort of plain speak, you never say that. And so when you sort of turn it into that, like, it's not, it's an opportunity, it's not something that I must do to tick a box, something that, you know, and it becomes this sort of like begrudging process, but actually it is an opportunity. And it's I mean, for me personally, I feel very, very connected to the fact that my company is essentially building technology that makes lots of people's lives easier, that could very easily make a lot of people's lives much more difficult. And because we do identity, access to services is obviously the other side of that identity piece. And so I am very, very conscious that you know, fixing that sort of efficient and access to the and secure access to services is obviously key and part of what we do, but it's baked into our values that we were also inclusive across the whole of our business. And I would actively encourage people to make sure they build in that as a value, as something that their business does by default. And I can't say that enough. And one of the big things that the DPA has done for us is when we signed your charter, I think we were one of the first to come and sign that charter, was to go, okay, we signed it, but what does that mean actually? You know, there's real like purpose in actually supporting the work that the DPA do, but what can we do in practice that actually can make an impact? And that you know, we're a small not so small growing startup, but at the time we were a very small startup, but actually we could still do stuff, and you know, we still had the ability to support in our way. And that's not by giving big check donations. Sorry, I know you'd probably like those as well. But actually, what can we do that is really tangible and going to make the difference? So I think there's always organisations maybe, you know, thinking a little bit more out of the box where you could do it, but you can always make impact somehow.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shelley. And yes, I know our team and your team are in touch, and we're cooking. We're cooking at the moment. So hopefully we're going to be able to talk about that.
I think we're nearly there. I think so.
Excellent. Well, in fact, I think there's been a meeting between our teams while we've been on this webinar. So I look forward to hearing how that went. It's all go. Amazing. And then Jade, thinking about, you know, what you have learned, particularly from the work that VMO2 have been doing around device donation at scale, looking across that wider ecosystem, what would you want other organizations to be able to learn from your approach to making this large scale reuse permanent? And what kind of minimum standards would you want them to put in place around their systems before they just try to start doing the same?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I guess going back to one of my initial points before were around, you know, responding very quickly initially, and then creating maybe some of the building blocks for sort of longer term, you know, structure around our programs, and the need for that, and the benefit of partnership and cross collaboration across the company. Building off that, I think we're not shy of the people. We have loads of people who are passionate and, you know, want to support, whether it is within our business and, you know, our supply chain teams, or our partnerships like Hubbub, for example, our charity partner. We have the people there and the partnerships. I think it's about setting the sort of framework and expectations so we're all really clear on the roadmap ahead, and kind of putting that in place, so we can all sort of, I guess, go back to that same framework and roadmap and reflect and make things better when needed, but setting expectations across the groups so that everyone is held to account, especially us where needed, thinking about minimum specs for devices and, what is the minimum spec that will go out through our device donation program to make sure that it can be used for as long as possible from whoever's receiving it, and it can be used effectively. I think those things are really important to make sure that we sort of have those formalized agreements in place, so that we can improve. It sets that tone throughout the partnership, and we can continue to sort of build off of that initial sort of foundation and framework. And at times there might be a need to pivot, but you've got that initial sort of base there in terms of how you can all have the certain responsibilities and accountability for getting that part done. And I think where it is a national program, there is still the need for sort of the local grassroots level support required. As we've heard from, Sylvia, for example, it's not just the handover of a device. There is more holistic support that goes around that. So the need to deliver a national program while still connecting and working closely with local organizations on the ground is really required. And to be able to do that at scale needs that sort of formalized framework to ensure that it continues to tick along smoothly, and you can continue to build and improve on it as you grow in insights and you learn more.
Fabulous. And I think it's so true. It's never, with any project, the planning phase, the building the framework, the creating the roadmap is not the most exciting bit, but it is the incredibly important bit because it's what gives you the foundation actually of how everything else will become real thereafter. And it can be really tempting, I think, for any of us to kind of want to just dive in and do the things. But you have to have that kind of that benchmarking. You've got to have that plan right at the start. So I think that is sage advice. And Vicky, coming to you, as we look ahead, what do you think is the most important condition around cross-sector partnership that will actually deliver sustained, credible change? What's the first thing that needs to be true for collaboration to really hold over time?
So I think the important condition, and this has been a theme over the last set of questions, it's about really identifying what the optimal way is to create impact. And that needs to be aligned with, from a private sector perspective, what the organisation does. What does it have in its ability to drive impact, and staying focused, being targeted, and having that really clear commitment. I think you mentioned earlier about playing your part, but being really clear what that part is hugely important. And then to ensure that collaboration is sustained, that you have that longevity, I think, unfortunately, as with anything, you need to constantly reinforce that need. Why? The importance of why. And for me, that's been about staying current, using the amazing research and thought leadership that Digital Poverty Alliance and others are producing around what that community need is, staying on top of trends. Government is, and DSIP particularly, there's lots of papers being created. The direction is clear. We all have to collaborate private and charity sector in order to fill or support that gap that exists. But kind of, I don't want it to be contradictory, but the ability to flex and refine and be creative whilst staying in our lane. And we've done that, you know, we've now implemented an employee device donation program. So this is absolutely still core around devices, because that is linked to what the organisation has. And then our future plans around whether that device donation is at a targeted regional level. So I think it's about being focused. It's identifying the best opportunity to deliver impact, being focused, constantly reinforcing the community need by staying current, and then finding those opportunities to innovate or be creative. And maybe that's using or leveraging employee devices, or what impact can be delivered at a regional or at a needs level.
Amazing. Thank you, Vicky. And we're also cooking with Atos. So we're also really excited to be working with you guys on this employee device donation program, which means that colleagues from across Atos in various different offices can bring in maybe old phones, old laptops that are their own device that are kicking around in their drawers at home, and be able to be part of this wider Atos vision to support people. So excited to see how that one progresses. It's going to be good. We've got time for a couple of the questions that have come in from our live audience. So I'm gonna pick on people to answer a question. If we can try and keep our answers relatively short and snappy, that would be great. So I'm going to come to Sylvia first. How do you balance providing individual support with longer sustained change? What can you learn from providing that individual support that feeds into longer term change and improvement for people?
I think starting at the very beginning with sort of an assessment of individual need for an individual informs the direction of travel, I think, in terms of the work that is done with that person, but also takes us into that wider community consultation, which is really important because that's where we start to build the numbers. Looking at training, whether that is individually targeted to start with, so very low level, entry level, and then having ambition. It's something around being ambitious. Where do we want to get to? So it's once people are engaged, once they feel safe, then you can go on that pathway. For me, it's around the ultimate freedom is around having money and having a job and having a good standard of life. And that's what I would like for everybody. So that's the sort of pathway that we are working on with people. And I think it's around feeding into strategic plans. So at a neighbourhood level, we gather data. And there's nothing soft and fluffy really about the voluntary sector, you know. We people do make that assumption, and we're really not. We are target driven. We are really good at collecting data. We're good at evidence and impact. We are good at assessing need, identifying gaps, emerging trends, all of those things. So that's what we bring to the table. So it's around how we then take all of that to key players who are decision makers, the people who do have the skills at a higher level or a more strategic level, if you like, to inform what happens. So I'm looking at Claire, I'm looking at Vicky, I'm looking at Shelley. I'm really interested in your work in terms of accessibility, because for us, that's the key to things. How do we make the world accessible to people who are living in poverty, and use the generosity of foundations and organisations that, you know, the work that Jade's involved with, to make that live and make it relevant and accessible to the people that we work with. That's the longer term sustainability. It's about lifting people up. I said before about not working to a deficit model. I want people to be up here, you know, and that's, I guess, what we're all working towards, Elizabeth.
It really is. And I think, yes, people having a better standard of living, that's the core point. It's not having a laptop. The laptop is the
No,
facilitator.
it's the vehicle, but it's something that enables, isn't it? And as you said before, for every for all the impact on one individual, we look at households as well, and the impact in a household, the impact on the family we get through the doors that are maybe being fed, the kids are doing their homework, the parents doing their job search, all of that sort. That's where the impact is, and that's what makes the difference in the longer term.
Amazing. Thank you. And I'm going to split this one between Jade and Shelley, and I may come in myself on it. I'm very conscious of time. So Sarah asks, the UK government action plan is a year old now. How well do we feel national policy is actually landing on the ground, and how much of the approach is transferable to places where geography and scale are barriers, such as the Isle of Man, where I know she's from? Jade, do you want to give a little bit of insight on the first part of that question?
Yes. Well, I think it being a year on feels like it's gone by really quickly, first of all, with all the commitments that were made very early on. But seeing the work that has been delivered has been, I think quite inspiring for us, especially as we're going towards, the end of our strategy at the moment, with our goals as a business to support those disconnected. I would say it really is around the collaboration piece, which I think has been really sort of to the point of a lot of our discussions today. It needs, like Vicky said, what is each party bringing to the table? What is that commitment? What part are you playing? What resource do you have? Do we have? Let's say for myself as part of the business to be able to provide and support, and then where is the collaboration within that to, go from these programs that are being delivered to then where can sort of like longer term systemic change happen to provide people with the access and affordable support for connectivity that they need. I think that's initially, and sorry, I know we haven't got much time, so I'll let other people speak, but I do think there's a part around everyone playing a part within that and the collaboration required.
I'll add on to that. I was absolutely going to say collaboration. I suppose to go a step further is, and I think in Sarah's point as well, was about how in smaller communities, how do we do that? I think they say the same thing as collaboration, but also to take that step further is telling stories, and I think that's a really important piece because you can only collaborate with things you know about, with things that are out there, and I think that when you can tell really inspirational stories of impact and good work that's happening, it can inspire you and know where to go and connect. So I'm probably going to lead you into your final closing statement, Elizabeth, about, and this was not planned, I promise. Where can we hear more?
It really wasn't. The other thing I would just add on to that, Sarah, is really having an understanding of the digital exclusion landscape within the area. So thinking about the Isle of Man, actually taking a little bit of time to step back and understand who are the groups who are most impacted, what support is available, what are the barriers that people are facing. I'm very excited that the DPA has recently registered as a charity on the Isle of Man, so we'd be delighted to get involved and support you in any way that would be helpful. So do drop us an email and be really happy to pick that up. We do have some further questions in the Q&A, but I pride myself on finishing on time and we're already a minute over. So we will come back to people separately on those. As well as being the 1-year anniversary of the Digital Inclusion Action Plan, and we continue to call and wait for the medium to long-term strategy that was always planned to come out of that first steps document. It is also the DPA's 25th anniversary, so we always are doing lots of things, but it's 25th anniversary, so we're doing even more things. So please do make sure that you are visiting digitalpovertyalliance.org, where you will find a range of ways to get involved, how to support us, how to learn more, how to be part of research, how to understand what delivery work we're doing in your area. And that includes, you can find on there how you as an organisation, if you have two or more people in your organisation, can sign our Charter for Digital Inclusion, which everyone on the screen has done. And it is our charter signatories who then also go through to our awards programme. So if you sign that and you do your update, you, like these 5 incredible ladies, could be at the gala in September, picking up your little glass trophy, recognising the work that you have done in one of 5 different areas. You can also find out how to join our industry forum, or if you're a local authority or a charity, the respective local authority network or community circle, both of which are free for public sector and voluntary sector. Please also make sure that you sign up for our community. You'll find the link at the bottom of that homepage, and that is how you will hear about further webinars and be able to take part in other exciting debates like this. Our next debate will be in March, date to be released soon, around the social media proposals which are currently coming from government and what that means for digital exclusion and media literacy more widely. Thank you to each of our panellists. Thank you to everyone who's come along, and we'll see you very soon in person or online. Take care, everyone, and congratulations again to our award winners.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.